Hey, everybody. Welcome to another session of MarriageWorks. We're on episode number 6, and we have a great topic for you all on tonight. So go ahead and put kids at least in a soundproof room. Some of the adults, the way that y'all be acting all churchy, I might need to put you in the soundproof room too. But go ahead and get your friends, your neighbors, relatives, your guests. Go ahead and open up the podcast inside of your households. Um, put your AirPods on, put your headphones on. Don't worry. Let me set the tone. Let me put on my clinical hat for a moment. This is a safe space. Bring it down a notch. Let's just bring it down. Bring it down. Take 3 deep breaths. One more. Hold it. Are we good? Are we in a safe place? Are we in a good place? All right. So let me tell you what this specific message is not about, right? It's not about being edgy. It's not about having locker room talk or girl talk, guy talk, none of those different types of things like that. It's actually really about speaking to a topic that the church oftentimes just whispers about. Now, over the last several years or so, most recently within the last 10 years, there has been a how should I say emphasis on more topics dealing with marriage, and sometimes they do deal with things from a sexual or from a physically intimate standpoint, but not so much because a lot of times, and you probably have seen it on social media, right? On one end, it is, sometimes some churches are trying to push it all the way to the edge. And then on the other end, it is so sanitized until, everything is kind of like June and Ward Cleaver or two separate beds. You never saw them kiss. You never saw them do anything. They just basically gave each other handshakes and they went to their separate rooms and then that was it, right? But um, the main idea is that this is really about your intimate relationships, right? And this is so important. So I have the question, just a quick little question, right? And this is not really about you providing answer at the moment. Why is it, and you can just kind of think about this, why is it the one subject God speaks about most plainly is the one subject, again, the church whispers about? And so we're going to talk for at least about an hour or so about this specific topic because most of the time people talk about tithing or not tithing. They'll go several years about, talking about all of the different oracles of God and ministry. But one of the books of scripture that is very rarely preached about in ministry is actually the Song of Solomon, which is actually um, has a dual meaning, like almost like a double entendre or a dual meaning. It is talking about him and his lover. Some people may think that it's the Queen of Sheba, or maybe even one of his wives or concubines. Right? I'm just talking about just being honest and forthright with that. But with all of the beautiful imagery, and some would say even explicit nature of what you see in the Song of Solomon, that is also talking about our intimate relationship with Jesus Christ in a non-sexual spiritual aspect. So there's a spiritual element to the Song of Solomon, but there's also a physical element to the Song of Solomon. In the confines of marriage, both of them are necessary. Both of them are important. Thus, the actual title of the message, which is Naked and Unashamed, and how to really promote healthy intimacy within those particular spaces. And so, what goes unspoken does not really go away because a lot of times, even certain pastors won't even talk about this subject for 30 plus years. Talk about everything else but this, and they could really have a good relationship at home. But a lot of times, what we avoid speaking about is a lot of times what we struggle with, or what we say thou shalt not is really what we are really doing behind closed
I
doors
want to do.
or want to do behind closed doors. So, before you reach into that grab bag box that's in the back of the corner, talk about some, hey, Pastor Martin, Lady Martin, get ready to talk about techniques. No, we're not talking about any of that because honestly, if you look at it more seriously, even when I talk with more mature men and I've also spoken in different circles with other married couples, those specific things about techniques is really all comes down to communication. So here's my thesis statement, if you will. Most sexual problems in a Christian marriage are really not sexual problems. They are guilt problems, silence problems, wearing an actual costume or mask. And so we want to take off the mask and let grace do the work in this particular area. So there is a couple of things that I kind of want to make sure that we understand, especially when it comes to the topic of sex. First of all, God built it and God actually governs it. God is not embarrassed by what he made. He designed intimacy, he blessed it, he fenced it, or he gave its proper parameters, which it talks about the bedroom shall be undefiled. And whatever you do within that space is between you, and I won't even say significant other. It's supposed to be between a man and his wife, a husband and his wife, a wife and her husband. And the same God who says not here says yes here freely. One God, one design, two words for two contexts. That fits. Okay, yes.
So I just before you get too deep into it, I just want to talk to the religious folk out there just for a minute.
Just for a minute.
Those that say, well, I don't know why they're talking about that because when I grew up, nobody ever mentioned that. They just always told us that it's a sin and you're going to hell, you fornicate, you're going to hell, and just don't do it. Or it's nasty. They would always tell the girls, it's nasty, don't you do that. But I want to give a couple of scriptures that talk about this. So for my religious folks, so you'll know that this is biblical, what we're speaking about tonight. So some of the scriptures that we have are Genesis 2, verse 24 through 25, where it says, therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. One flesh. What does that mean? They shall come together and have lovely relations. And then it goes further to say, and they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. So that is the basis of, or the foundational scripture of what we're going to be talking about tonight. And also, if you look at Hebrews chapter 13, verse 4, it says, marriage is honorable in all, and the bed is undefiled. So you can do whatever you and your spouse agrees to. And then the third and last scripture that I want to talk about is Proverbs 5, verse 18 through 19. And it says, let thy fountain be blessed and rejoice with the wife of thy youth. What does that mean? Let thy fountain be blessed and rejoice with the wife of thy youth. Be thou ravished always by her love.
I'm sorry, I can't behave with all points, y'all.
And see, when you say that, ravished always with her love, that doesn't mean that we just got to go to church together and be super saved. That means that we're going to have some fun times together as well because it's honorable in the sight of the Lord. And again, the bed is undefiled. So, no, we're not going to be talking about positions. We're not going to be talking about things like that. Ooh, I'm clutching my pearls. So we're not going to talk about that. So if you're here for that, then you might want to just go ahead and sign off. But what we are going to talk about is are things that have always been seen as taboo in the church. And it can't be taboo because if God says be fruitful and multiply, how in the world are you going to do it if you don't come together? Hello, is my mic on?
Yes, your mic is on.
And so, huh? And so basically, I just wanted to make sure that you knew that we had the foundational scriptures before Pastor Martin gets deeper into it. And so that's all I have to say right now.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And so I'll give you one particular school of thought, if you will. So in the early church, there was, and you probably, those of you that have been listening in to me for like a long time, sometimes we have different lenses when we come or when we look at the topic of sexual intimacy, especially within the confines of marriage. And the truth of the matter is that covenant actually predates intimacy. So when we talk about the bedroom shall be undefiled and that the husband belongs to the wife and the wife belongs to the husband, we already know that it's supposed to be a time where you all should uniquely and intimately come together. However, especially after you've been married for quite a few years and you have passed the honeymoon period, or what I would call the ravishing period, or for people in the hood, the jackrabbit
What am
period.
I saying?
Yes, it doesn't have to end, but I'm just talking about when life starts to happen because before you have kids, it's pretty much wide open, right? But then when you have children and then you have jobs and then you have stress and then you have duties within the home, there was a season within our particular marriage, especially when you don't really touch on that subject quite a bit when you are growing up into your household. Because I know my dad might primarily said, "Don't come home with any diseases and don't have your arm falling off." That was it. That was my birds and the bees conversation.
And I didn't have it at all. So,
And so all of the information that I gathered was trial and error, and it was more error than anything.
and friends.
And of course, friends introduce you to great things, and sometimes they introduce you, most of the time, they introduce you to not so great things, especially if those friends are not saved. And it doesn't matter because more than likely, when you were younger, you're probably not really saved either. So, all of those different lenses that you look through shape how you see things going forward. And we haven't even got into the part about, well, what happens if there was sexual assault that happened prior to you meeting your spouse, or there was some type of physical abnormality that you've been dealing with prior to getting married, or many, many years down the line you see all of these different commercials. You probably could listen to Star 94.5 and the whole 9 yards, where you talk about all of these different types of devices that's going to enhance things for the woman or for men. A lot of times they dealing with things where you have, let me just be honest with it, where you don't have the strength to keep the mission going forward, or let me just give the clinical term, erectile dysfunction. You see all of these pills out there, Viagra, Cialis, Rose Sparks. I mean, it's literally everywhere. And remember having a conversation with Lady Martin. I was like, it is really odd how there's so much promotion for these products to men, especially around my age, if you will. And I can honestly say that you really don't need that stuff. You just need to exercise, eat very well, and make sure that you have proper communication with your spouse, especially with that diet and that exercise and having and checking your blood pressure. Because if your blood pressure is not where it needs to be, then no, you're not going to be able to finish the mission, and things are not going to be where you need for them to be. Not only that, from the woman's side, and Lady Martin could speak to this, but what I've learned even from her is that a woman's mind is very much in tune, and that is the very first thing that needs to be addressed before you even get to the body. Because brothers, how many times have you heard or have you said to yourself, "Never mind, never mind, it's okay, don't worry about it." This is when you have the mindset that you need to perform or that you need to be this super sexual being because that's all that is promoted to us on television. But even outside of that, even to another standpoint, from a biblical and even a church history standpoint, sometimes, especially for my spiritual people and my church people that are out there is also, and I just learned about this. There's also an ancient attitude about sex in that after you have children, that's it. In other words, the only function of having sex is to have children, and then after that, you're finished and you're done. This was actually Saint Athanasius' perspective because it was only to do what? Adhere to Genesis 1, verse 26 through 28, which is to be fruitful and to multiply. So after you have finished multiplying, then you have fulfilled God's command to replenish the earth, right? Your quiver is full. You shot out all of your arrows. You have your two kids, your one kid, whatever it may be, if that's your desire to have children. But then after that, that's it. You get what I'm saying? You just have children, and then there should not no longer be any true emphasis on physical intimacy with your um, husband or wife. And a lot of that is centered around Eastern thought or Eastern thinking, um, from that particular area of the world, which emphasizes more on spiritual things as opposed to physical things. So that is actually a real phenomenon, and some people think about that and they deal with that even today. But again, I was talking with Lady Martin before I go into the next segment, and I was saying about all this marketing that goes to men, especially for men that are in that age range, whether it's their mid 40s or I'll actually starting from 35, go figure, from 35 to 55, in that age range, there is a lot of advertisement that goes out over and over again about your performance inside of the bedroom. But I wonder if there were no pills, no enhancements, and none of the things like that, you do realize that as your spouse and yourself, as you begin to grow older, your bodies are not supposed to function like they are in their 20s anymore, right? So if you artificially, unless it's a medical reason for it, if you artificially put those things inside of your body, and this also goes for the women too, because there's a full robust market for the women as well. If you do a lot of artificial things to your body to kind of keep things going forward, and it's not because of any type of medical issue or clinical type of issue, then what are you doing? You are putting yourself in a very artificial space, and you are not allowing for your bodies to gradually grow old together to where it's not about quantity, it's more about quality, right? One pill, and then you are the Statue of Liberty for 5 days in a row. Is that sanitary enough? Is that safe? That's a safe
You can
space
say
enough?
whatever you want.
Okay. And
Prepared them for this session, so.
yes. But in reality, it's not like that. So I
And
have
just to be honest, the ladies don't really want that anyway.
no,
I know 5 days,
that's 2 days.
painful.
And most of the time, even when it comes to the
It's
men,
not natural,
it's
exactly.
not natural. And it's not natural when it comes to the men either. And now if that now let me qualify that. If you and your spouse have that type of frequency going on and you are happy with it, then what am I going to do? I'm going to be just like Drew Skin. I'm going to have both my hands up just like this. That's y'all business. That's your business.
Go
But
off.
y'all go off, you do whatever you need to do. But as far as what I see from normal couples that I've counseled over the years, whatever that space is, just know that your bodies will change over time and that it should not be as now one of the things that is true about that is that your flesh as it decreases as the years go by, your spirit is supposed to increase because there is going to come a day, and I'll just speak for myself, there is going to come a day to where I'm not going to be able to do the things that I did in my 50s, 40s, 30s, whatever. Because God willing, if Lady Martin and I stayed together till our 70s and I would just say 80s on up, then those areas are not going to be a major emphasis. Because even when I've talked to older men that are around that particular age, and I talk about without a pill, when you're in that specific space, it's all about intimacy and and conversation, and honestly talking about more so about heavenly things as opposed to earthly things. Spending time with your grandchildren, and you know what? I genuinely like you. I like to be around you, even if we were not um, um, having physical intimacy with one another, I actually just like you as a person. I like her as a friend. And so having that bond and having that friendship is going to become more and more important later on. That way you won't have the mindset, and I'm speaking to the men here, that I need to have somebody. that is half my age plus 7, right? Half my age plus 7. That's the age range. That's young enough for me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. No, no, you don't have to go into that specific space unnecessarily. Now, of course, people are going to do what they need to do, but I am speaking from a biblical perspective.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about how many of us, I'm going to say us because I'm putting myself in a category, especially us that were born and raised in the church, how many of us were programmed on when it came to our view of having sexual relationships. Like Pastor was saying, how it was in Eastern culture that the idea of having sex was strictly for procreation, and just being fruitful and multiplying, and that was it. And so many of us, that's how we were groomed or programmed in church. And so we want to talk a little bit about the switch that nobody flipped for you. Okay. So for years, the church told you no. They said, no, it is not good to have sex. No, you cannot explore. No, you cannot do these things. And they always said all of these, they always said no to all these things. And we had genuine questions growing up. We had genuine questions, but no, we're not going to talk about that. No, you don't need to know about that. And so many of us have were ignorant. We grew up ignorant to even knowing how to have a relationship or being attracted to the opposite sex or anything like that. It was all seen as perverted, or you're being nasty, or you being fast, you being grown. Has anybody ever heard those words before? And so that's how we were programmed to think that when it comes to that area of our life, no, 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 no. And we had our blinders on to say no to everything. And then what happens is you're a virgin, he's a virgin. You go to the altar, the preacher says all of these words, with this ring I thee wed, and go through the marriage ritual and all that kind of stuff. And you say yes, you say yes, you say I do, you say I do. And then you go to wherever your honeymoon point is. And then it's like, okay, now perform. And there's inhibitions, there's uncertainty, there's fear, there is doubt, because you don't really know what to do, because all of this time you didn't have premarital counseling, so you don't even know what to expect. And then when it's not what you expected, it's like, oh man, that was it. Oh man, we failed. Oh man, I don't want to do that again. And then you have this totally opposite perspective on what it means to connect with each other. And so when we say the switch that nobody flipped you for, we're talking about nobody told you how to go through the process of falling in love, of communicating with each other, of knowing how to build that relationship to take you to the point where it becomes natural to connect and natural to become intimate with each other. So I want to give one example of that. And it says, you can hand a man the keys to a building, and Pastor has said this many times. You can hand a man the keys to a building, but if he spent 10 years being taught that he would be arrested for walking in, he will still stand at the door. That is not rebellion, that is training. And that's what many of us have grown up to deal with, is that we haven't been trained on how to love another person. We've just been told no, 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 no. And then when we get the keys to the kingdom, I remember okay, so I was watching, we were watching, because I'm gonna put him in it too. So there's this crazy movie out there called that's called Robin Hood Men in Tights. You may,
Oh my God, boy!
and if anybody has seen that movie, it's about it's pretty much, it's like a
Parody,
yeah, a parody
a spoof.
of the the fairy tale Robin Hood or whatever. And so Maid Marian was, she was like the prized possession. And so Robin, he was trying to get to her. Everybody was trying to get to her because she was like all that in a bag of chips. So everybody wanted her. She was beautiful. But then Robin, he has his moment and he's like, yes, I finally got her to the bedroom. And when he got her in the bedroom, she had on a chastity
Oh,
belt.
I remember that now. Okay.
chastity belt, and it was like it was made of iron, and it actually had a key that
And
unlocks.
that was a real thing back in
Yeah,
the day.
yeah, it had a key that unlocked before he could actually be intimate with her. And so he had to figure out where in the world he was supposed to get this key from and how can he become intimate with her. And so I gave that example to say that that is how we have been mentally programmed or mentally trained to where we know that that's what we want, but we don't know how to get to it because we were never given the tools and the resources in order to get to that destination.
And then, even with that, let's say, for example, you do have a close relationship with your children, or you have a young person that's getting ready to be married, and or they are engaged and they're going to be married in a couple of days, and you're mentoring them, or they want to talk to you about that. The safety is in scriptures. The safety is understanding exactly what God meant, and you can refer them to specific things. That's why the title is called Naked and Unashamed. The nakedness is, yes, I'm going to see all of you. You're going to see all of me through the times when everything is standing at attention, and this is talking about men and women, to the time when it's like gravity falls and everything begins to change in your body, you still see that person for who they are. And you see, my wife is more beautiful to me today than it was when we first met. Now, when we first met, she was a 10 in my eyes for sure. But it's still that way even to this day. I'm still attracted to her. I still love her. But we had to work on that. We had to work on that. I had certain strengths in certain areas. She had certain strengths in certain areas, and then when we started, and I think that what really clicked for us is that when we really started becoming friends, and then we talked about specific things, even though it was uncomfortable. Sometimes it's uncomfortable talking about sexual things, but when we talk about those things, or we have discussions, especially when it comes to movies and things like that, right? And I'm talking about romance movies. I'm not talking about the other type of movies. Wink, wink. I'm just trying to help you. Okay. Lamar's like, what are you talking about? I'm not gonna say that because there was a time period before I was saved and those VCR tapes, but I'm just going ahead and just put it there.
I
Anyway,
think all boys went through that phase. So
yes,
yeah,
yes, yes, and
probably girls too.
yes, and actually, it's a lot of that even today. But I will tell you this, especially, and this is a good piece as far, especially when it comes to the types of lens that you have. When you're told things are being nasty, so and so forth, and even for the women, saying no is very, very, very common. And then for the men, and so Lady Martin touched on that, but even for the men, sometimes we look through the lens of pornography. And you can't, those are paid actors. A lot of times those people were in sex trafficking. And so when you try to make your spouse do those specific things against their will, then that's when the bedroom start not it's no longer a place of safety, but now it turns into a place of performance, grades, all of these different types of things, which you don't need to do all of that, right? And of course, even when you are inside of the bedroom, and let's say, for example, it's a situation where it's not such a pleasurable experience for one or the other, or even both, talk about it. Somebody may truly have not been feeling well. The other person may be exhausted because they've been working and then they didn't even get a chance to decommission it. So they come straight home, they're dealing with the kids all day. And then for the men, we tend to compartmentalize. So we can have sex at a drop of a dime because that's the way that God made us. But our spouses, they have to decommission. They got to empty out all of those thoughts and then they will be ready. And I even remember this when I forgot who's the Pop or Jaden when they were born around that early time. That was my first realization that man, my parents didn't really talk to us a lot about the transition from being with each other before kids, and then the transition to how to be with each other after kids, and how you have to, as a man, when the woman is taking care of the kids and taking care of the household, because that's what their natural proclivity is, how you have to and take up the slack in that specific area. And so when you start taking up the slack more and more, and you do child rearing more and more, and she's able to relax during that evening period of time, then she will be even more available to you. And so I remember this because I remember I had a job working at Florida Technical College, and I was working from 6 o'clock. I had a split shift, so I worked from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Brings back memories, right? 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. and then from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. So most of the time, I would see Lady Martin in the morning, in the middle of the day. I would come home for those radical times I really wanted to come home, right? And I would get a chance to see Pop at that time because he was the only one at that time. And then I would go back to work. Now, when they're very, very young, then okay, that was very, very difficult on her because guess what? She's with a crying baby. She's also working, right? Not all of us could give our spouses the soft life to where she just didn't have to work for an extended period of time. Because Lady Martin didn't work during a couple of years, maybe like 1 year, but that was the max. And that was with Jada. With Andre, she went to work like 2 weeks afterwards, like 4 weeks after that. So, especially if you have a C section or your body is healing, that 6 week period, postpartum, there's a lot that's going on in your significant in your wife's body and also mentally that you really have to practice self-deferred gratification and you have to take up the slack. But I'm working. When I come home from work, I want to decommission as well. I remember sitting there eating dinner. She would have pork chops and green beans and macaroni eggshells. That was like my favorite dinner until the headache started kicking in with all that salt. But I was young. I could take the pork chops and that was like my favorite dish. I loved that. But she was still tired. And then, of course, when I would try to be intimate with her, most of the time it was cool. But there was a lot of times when she was just saying, I'm tired, I got a headache, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then I'm mad with her on a regular basis. I was like, what do I need to do? And then, of course, usually what ends up happening is that there's an argument, and then she would say something to the effect of, well, I'm here all day taking care of these particular kids, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm tired, Andre. I'm tired. And so I'm like, okay, what do I need to do? Go on vacation. Going on vacation, going on a cruise, great, because there's no responsibilities for her. Don't have to cook, don't have to clean. The kids are inside a kids club, but that can only be in certain seasons. But that gave me a clue that I need to ease her particular burden at home. That also got me to the point to where I needed to actually change jobs because I was missing that time with my particular children, but I still had needs as a husband. So I had to make a choice. I had to either um, just deal with things and stay in a cycle of frustration, or I need to look at my job and I needed to start looking for something else. And it took a while. It was 5 years of working nights, but on the fifth, sixth year, I finally got from out of that particular cycle and I was able to come home on time. Got my decommissioning period of time. I'm able to play with the kids, see them, because I was also missing my children because those are some very, very important years, traveling, all of that. But then when I was able to come home at that specific time and spend time with my kids, take the burden off of her, then if mama's happy, daddy's going to be happy a whole bunch. And I was very, very happy because I listened. It wasn't easy. It didn't happen at the drop of a dime because I had to battle between do I put food on the table or am I just going to focus on what I can't get from her right now? How do I do that? I got to pay bills, but I also have needs. So what do I need to do? I need to make sure that I change the dynamic so that I can get what I need. And then she can also get what she needs as well. Because here's another thing too, is that it's not that just men want it all the time. A lot of times our wives, they want it from us too, but you just got to clear the runway. You clear the runway, then they will feel comfortable and they feel safe. Safe meaning bills are paid, safe meaning the children are taken care of, and you're not just checking out, you just sitting there and the kids are just jumping all over the place. And you don't discipline the children. You let the wife do all the disciplining, and then you just sit there, or the husband does all the disciplining there, and then the wife is just sitting in the background. Y'all both have to do that. And then again, once that plate is cleared, now you can move on to the next area. Okay. So I got some scriptures for you. First Corinthians chapter 7. Y'all still with me? All right. You still with me? I know it's tight in there, but it'll help you.
Somebody put "we with you" in the chat.
You with me? Okay. First Corinthians chapter 7, verse 3 through 5 says, let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence. I love that word benevolence. And likewise also the wife unto the husband. Defraud ye not one another, except it be with consent for a time. Boy, I tell you, isn't that wonderful? She go chime in. Thank you. Go
I
ahead.
want to chime in because as you were reading that, I looked it up in the ESV version. So that might have been the I don't know.
English Standard Version.
No, yeah, I looked it up in the English Standard Version.
Okay.
And it says, let me clear my throat. We with you. Okay. All right. I'm glad you are. It says the husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights, and likewise the wife to her husband. For the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Do not deprive one another, except perhaps by agreement for a limited time, that you might devote yourselves to prayer and then come together again, so that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self control. And that really,
Loaded.
yeah, it's loaded. It has a lot to do with some of the things that Pastor was saying. Um, when he was mentioning that he didn't know how to make the situation better. And also on the ladies' end is that the thing that I wanted to point out in here was not using sex as a weapon. That's what I was thinking about when he was talking because ladies, y'all know how we can get, and I'm coming close to the mic because I want to make sure that y'all hear me out here. So if you know that that man is doing everything that he needs to do, and he's taking care of you, taking care of the kids, out there working hard, facing all the things that he has to face outside, when he comes home, do not withhold from him unless there's something going on and y'all communicate and y'all talk about it and y'all consent together to say, okay, yeah, we're going to pause for a minute because this is going on. But it's really important to make sure that you all are communicating so that there is not a lack of self control, so that that man is not sitting here thinking, well, what in the world did I do wrong? Why is she withholding from me? Why won't she connect with me? Why won't she be with me? Because we sometimes we can get very petty. And when we don't get our way, we try to use it as a weapon. So we want to make sure that we're not using it as a weapon as well.
Let me go even deeper because I've dealt with men for a long time. Ladies, if you going through that a lot and it's being used as a weapon, if you hear that man get up at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning and the bathroom light goes on, I'm preaching better than you looking at me, then you know that that's not a good space for you to be in. And let me give you the biblical reference for this. So the biblical reference for this is where Sarah and Abraham and Hagar, right? Sometimes there's an expectation that it's my body, my choice, and he should be able to just deal with that. You notice how the scripture says both of you all have to consent to be with each other, and both of you all have to consent with not being with each other within reason. So when you use it like a weapon, you'll be like what Sarah did with Abraham, which is because she could not really be with him in a specific way, then she pushed him into the arms of another. Now, he shouldn't have did that either, but it was a mutual type of situation to where they weren't doing what they needed to do with each other, and she just got impatient and just said, "Well, you need to go ahead and you need to be with Hagar." But then at the end of the day, we already know that there's only could be one queen inside of the house at that moment.
Chaos.
It was going to ensue with chaos. So you have to be careful with those specific areas. And I get it. I understand. And this is also husbands why you also need to make sure as well. A minute. Well, you've got to get married yourself, so you need to know. So this is also why you also need to
I
see.
can't see.
You can't see. Okay, well, there's a child of ours that's in the midst. But it's okay. You old now, so it don't matter. So sometimes,
Gotta learn.
as husbands, when that is resolved and everything is cool, you also have to give grace to your wife that is willing to be with you at the time when she is tired or when it has been an exhausting day. Your wife still loves you, but you may not get through the chandelier this time. This time it may be just a starfish. I'm preaching better. You looking at me. So if the person is just laying there, she's smiling, but this is all that I got.
Hey, but the important part is
Y'all are together. She submitted, and y'all are together. And then that's it. And sometimes as men, it's the same way with us. Because I'll be honest with you, there's been times when I have gotten in trouble for not reading the room. And I withheld myself from my wife because I'm just gonna be honest. Sometimes I was being stupid or too oblivious, too into the video games, too into work, and she's trying to she is being a wife. She's being exactly under normal circumstances exactly what I want to be. And then I miss the moment. And then auntie comes. You want to see somebody that is angry? Withhold yourself from your wife when she wants to be with you. Hell hath no fury, and I'll just leave it that way. So
so,
in
ladies. Let me give you a secret.
okay.
When he is acting naive and like he don't know what day it is, just tap him on the butt and say, "Come on, we're doing this."
And yeah, I'll just leave it at.
2 taps if you really want.
And but see, those things for us is as somebody who be people who have been together for over 25 years, our relationship is like that. But 26, excuse me, over 26 plus years being together, we had to work on that through children, through kids. Once they go from not knowing what day it is to now they're listening to the door or floating around the house and their spirit that sets in because I don't want my kids to know that their parents is freaky acting. I don't want them to know that. That's that's important, right? Because that's how we were raised, and it's important for that. That's why men and even for ladies, you ever wonder why sometimes you do more when you leave the household or when the kids go to grandma's house? Because you don't have to worry about those fears any longer, right? And there's a lot of fears that are there. Paul, and I think we might have to do a part two with this. What do you think?
Um. Oh gosh, it's already nine
He
o'clock.
went by really, really fast.
Okay. Well, yeah.
You might have to do a part two to this. So
Yeah.
I'll put it this, I'll end it with this. Paul does not describe intimacy as a favor granted. You doing me a favor. Oh, we're doing each other a favor. Outside in this world, there's so many stressors, there's so much stuff that's outside that could get at you, that could bring you down, hurt your self-esteem, people talking about you, a whole bunch of mess. But then, as husband and wife, and I'll say that very loud, as husband and wife, when you all are in that sacred space together where no one else in the world is supposed to be, and it's just you two, that's a moment in time where both of y'all should be smoking the proverbial cigarette once you're done because you have released yourselves with each other. You talk, you just look at each other, you talk about silly stuff. Lady Martin is a comedian when it comes to a lot of things. She loves to tell jokes. She is very, very funny. And you just talk about this life in general, whatever it may be. Some of y'all might even poop after you're done with it. And then you just start laughing or whatever. Because you're being together alone because it's not about performance. You're not in there. You're not shooting a video. You're not shooting a pornography video. You're not doing that, right? It's supposed to be a time when y'all really supposed to relax with each other. Because on tomorrow, you got to get right back up and you got to go back and you got to deal with the world. But when I'm with my honey bear, The world should, and when you're with your spouse, the world should stop just for a few moments. Don't look at all these TV. Well, I need to be around and I need you to be with me until the sun comes up. The average amount of time that intimacy with your spouse, and this is from the ladies, is 12 minutes. 12. But what about all the other time? Most of that is talking, intimacy, flirting, a whole bunch of flirting, cracking jokes, sending reels to each other. If y'all would see the number of reels that my wife has sent me about vacations, a whole bunch of funny stuff, it is ridiculous. But that is all about intimacy because if I'm laughing, then that means that I'm relieving stress. If I'm talking about the tea of the day, and Lady Martin be having her tea was piping hot today. So when she gives me the tea about what happens with her job or what happens in our different organizations, whatever it may be, then I'm just listening there, and I'm like, "Yes, girl, I have my bonnet on too. I'm kind of just to listen there, just drinking up my tea." And then to talk, yeah, that's fine because we're being friends, and all those things build up to intimacy. All right. Huh?
Yeah, I think we should stop.
Okay, okay. So as I finish it right here. So again, Paul does not describe intimacy as favor granted. He describes it as a debt owed, mutual, reciprocal, and not weaponized. Note carefully, the same verse binds that binds him also binds her. Anybody who quotes verse 4 without verse 3 is building a club, not a covenant. And as a warning, and I'll close right here, and this will be just part one. We'll do part two the next time that we meet together. Um, Warning to voice out loud. Never let this passage become a crowbar. Paul says with consent, and he says it to both. So you have to be. We talk a lot about consensuality. This is where I'm going to close my little notepad right here, right? So we talk about consenting adults. As consenting adults, when you all are with each other physically, you are in agreement with each other that this is something that we want to do, and that whatever is done, the sky's the limit. Sometimes there are boundaries. There's certain boundaries that Lady Mark has with me. There's certain boundaries that I have with her, even when it comes to me, right?
You ain't got no boundary.
You said I ain't got no boundaries.
No.
Okay, well, anyway, I'm just saying. I'm gonna go ahead and throw a red flag on myself, right? So sometimes, um, main point is that there's a whole bunch of different how should I say, communication that needs to take place. There's boundaries. There's certain things that you should do. Like with me, my main thing is, making sure that you are tuned in and make sure that you're engaged. I like engagement, right? So whatever your particular style is, whatever that may be, it should be consensual. And I'll also leave with this other point too. We talk about there's a lot of fears, right? Fear of the kids hearing you, bills, insecure about stuff being paid on time, the fears that you bring into the relationship because before you all got married, you were intimate with each other. And so now that you got married, you hear all this biblical stuff and you have guilt because when you went down the aisle, my dress wasn't white, it was off white. Nowadays, people choose totally different colors. And then when you're with each other, you have some of these things or these guilt issues inside of your brain or something that has happened to you in the past. As husband and wife, and I'll close here, make sure that you guys talk those things out. And here's another clue. Sometimes the best time to talk about it is not before or even after you all have been with each other. Try to pick a time outside of all of that where y'all just happen to be talking, and then you sense the person's, you read the room to say a few words. Well, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Or the last time we were with together, this is what I was thinking. The other person may not remember, but even if they don't remember, share and talk. When you talk things out, it'll be better for you. That's what consenting adults really is all about. That's what Paul is talking about. I want you to have my consent, and I want you to have my consent, and I want her to have. I want you to have my consent, and she wants me to have her consent. It has to be both ways. I have my needs from a physical standpoint. She has her needs from an intimate standpoint. If I fulfill her needs from the intimate standpoint, then I get the physicality, and then on the opposite of that, I'm learning about intimacy as a man because eventually, brothers, I'm telling you, this body is going to change, and you need to allow for your wives to teach you in that specific area. Okay.
Part two.
Part two? Oh, okay. I was just getting ready to go, boy. That's
Yes,
that
you
preacher
are.
side with me. So you gonna go ahead and close us out? Go ahead and close
Nope.
us out. You ain't gonna close us out?
Nope, you just did.
You should close us out. With everybody. Bye bye, everybody.
Thank you so much for tuning in tonight for episode 6 of Naked and Ashamed Part 1.
Part one.
We're definitely going to do a part 2. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into some of the things that Pastor was talking about, even as it relates to things that happen pre-married, um, in your premarital stage. And we really want to dig into that a little bit too, because that comes with a lot of communication and understanding on things that your spouse may have witnessed or may have experienced prior to marriage, which has shaped their view of intimacy.
Yeah.
So, but that's a little bit that's going to take some time. So I think we should to unpack. So yeah, so we're gonna go do a part 2 of this. Hopefully you learned something tonight. Hopefully you enjoyed the session. Share it with someone else. Like was it like, share, and
Like, share, and subscribe for all my
like,
YouTube
share,
kids out
and
there.
subscribe. And with that being said, thank you so much again for joining us, and we will see you next time.
See you
Good
later, everybody.
night.
See you later. See you later. See you later. Practice. Practice makes it perfect. Practice makes it perfect. Oh, where am I at? Okay, there you go. Bye, y'all.